Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 103 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. I still can't believe I reached triple digits. I didn't think I was going to reach a single digit, let alone triple. Now, before I introduce tonight's legendary name in the professional wrestling business, I would like to introduce today's co-host for this evening, wrestling fan himself, Mr. Christopher Petey.
Heyo.
Good to see you again, Chris. Now, before I introduce tonight's guest star, let me just say that this guest star is a Wildcat of a star, and I'm gonna say this gentleman's accolades before I introduce him. He is a former NWA Cyberspace Heavyweight Champion. He is a former NWA Cyberspace Tag Team Champion with, of course, Cowboy James Storms. He is a 7-time NWA TNA Tag Team Champion, 6 times with James Storm, 1 time with Primetime Elix Skipper. In addition to that, he was ranked in the Pro Wrestling Illustrator in number 44 in the top 500 wrestlers in the year of 2004. As well as that, he was also ranked in the PWI's top, Tag Team of the Year for 2004, along with, of course, Cowboy James Storms. He is he was ranked Tag Team of the Year with Cowboy James Storms in the year 2005 by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And finally, he was also the 2003 and 2004 Tag Team of the Year with Cowboys James Storms at NWA TNA. My guest at this time is Wildcat Chris Harris. Mr. Harris, how are you today? Welcome, sir.
I'm doing great, Petey. Thank you so much for that introduction, and congratulations on your triple digits.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, you rattled them all off there. You know, some of those I hadn't thought of in a long time, so I really appreciate that.
Anytime, as a longtime fan of yours and a longtime fan of professional wrestling, I wanted to make sure not only did I put you over, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to credit your accolades.
I appreciate that, man. That's those are some pretty good accolades.
I agree. You're you and of course Cowboy James Storms are our tag team specialists.
Oh yeah, man. We made some magic back in the day.
Absolutely, and I was so proud. I can proudly say that I watched every single moment of that.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing from those that started watching from day one. That's because that's, you know, there weren't a lot of eyes on the product when TNA started. So, you know, we were just a growing company. So a lot of people didn't see some of our best work when we first got together.
True. And also it was actually one of the very first promotions to actually compete with the WWE after WCW folded.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the big things with bringing it on, because Jeff Jarrett, you know, I'm sure he put a lot of thought into this, but he knew that with WCW gone, and you can add ECW to that list too, with everything gone, he knew that there was an audience out there that was just ready for something new.
Absolutely. And one of the first questions I have for you, and this could be a typical cliche question, and that is, how and when did you get your first start and or big break into the professional wrestling business? Take us there.
Well, I started in '94, and I did. I was most of the time I was around my area of the Cincinnati area, promotion which I still work with today. That's the Northern Wrestling Federation. But for the first, I'd say about my first 5 years, I was kind of getting out there on the indie scene, on the independent level, and you know, I think that's good for everybody to do. You get some experience under your belt, and I even tell some of the young guys now, even a bad experience is an experience. So I learned a lot of things of what to do, what not to do, and just, you know, every match I had, it was just you know, a learning experience, and you know, I was just honing my craft and getting out there and doing a lot of traveling. You know, we were past the territory days, but there was a group of us that were getting out there and getting in those car rides. You know, we weren't up to the plane rides. You know, car rides and throwing as many as we could into a car and fitting as many as we could in the hotel. And yeah, you just kind of you learn the tools of the trade that way. You know, you know, some of those car rides are more memorable than maybe the match you had that night. So I really cherished those first 5 years in the business. But to get to your question, so in '99, I had worked with a couple guys that in one of the areas that had Nashville connections, and Nashville was is and always has been a really big wrestling town. I think the whole Tennessee area is. And so I had a connection to come down there, and they were still doing TV. They were working with the NWA still. So I was brought down there, and I had some exposure to TV down there, and was, you know, kind of fit into the program down there. In a way, that to me was a good step, step above. You know, I was learning how to work local TV, and but it wasn't long after that. I was working for a promoter named Bert Prentice in Nashville, and Bert Prentice had a lot of connections, and one of his connections was with Terry Taylor, who was the talent relations for WCW at that time, and this was the end of '99, beginning of 2000. So we are getting close to that last year of WCW, which, you know, if anybody's looked back, you know, was a train wreck. But they were bringing in a lot of security and for them Nitro and Thunder shows, and I was part of a group of security that was brought in, and we were only paid per night, but we were brought into WCW, and for the Nitro and Thunder shows, we were on those, and a lot of times we were getting bumped around, but that was part of it. But I got to see, you know, what it was like on a big time scale, and just being able to travel and say I was working for WCW. I mean, that was a huge thing, a really breakout moment for me. But as well as that, they were also the WCW had their Saturday night show and WCW Saturday night and their WCW Worldwide show on Sundays. And we were getting some work on there. So they were taking a look at a lot of us. And I was getting some great work that whole year of 2000. I was getting a lot of matches with some top stars, and I was getting TV exposure. So for me, that was just that was a big break for me. I mean, people started recognizing that I was not just on TV, but I was with WCW. And, you know, there's always talk of moving up, but unfortunately, we didn't get to that point. But I did in that year. October of 2000, I did sign a contract with WCW, and that was just huge for me. I mean, to be able to sign a contract with one of the big two was just, I mean, that was the greatest thing I could do. So, so yeah, I mean, that was kind of my road leading up to that.
Oh, and you know what? So, you mentioned also that, you know, Tennessee is a big place for wrestling. I mean, this is going back to the Jerry the King Lawler days with Andy Kaufman. It was huge, and also you have the Jarretts that I believe ran like the Tennessee territories, right?
Right. Yeah, they ran over Tennessee, Kentucky, probably West Virginia. Just yeah, a lot of those guys. I mean, you know, Lawler was the king of Memphis. We all know that, but the Jarretts were running alongside him, and yeah, that was just a huge. That was a huge territory for a long time.
Very cool. And I remember you mentioned when you signed with WCW. I'll still never forget you portrayed the fake Sting.
That's right. That actually was the same month in October when I signed the contract. That Halloween Havoc, we did a big match. It was Sting and Jeff Jarrett, and they were. It was the kind of deal where they were having a lot of stings from Sting past that were coming up. You know, with the Surfer Sting, and you know, just I kind of portrayed that that Crow Sting. You know, because they looked at me and with my hair, I really resembled and same kind of body type. Everything really resembled Sting, and you know, they had, like I said, they had been noticing my work on the other shows, so I kind of had their attention. But then they came with that, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. Now, obviously, the biggest one I did was Halloween Havoc, but there were many other nights, TV nights where I was Sting. You know, whether or not he wasn't there that night, or you know, just whatever the case may be, that the angle they were running. But there was a lot of times I was in the rafters, and they would just kind of shine a there, and you couldn't really tell exactly. You just and the hair and that. So, and then there was other times where I like came out of a coffin one time and took a bat to Vampiro, and it was the strobe lights that were going on and off, so you couldn't really look that close to it. So yeah, there was just a lot of other different some backstage skits we did. So that was a reoccurring role that really played out there at Halloween Havoc, and I
Thank you, Pros.
interaction with him. So it was really cool. It was great work with Jeff. It was great to work with Sting. Even Sting was the one painting my face, and it was always interesting because as he's doing painting the face, he would always tell me, he's like, this is like looking into a mirror. So even by Sting standards, I fit the bill.
And what was so cool in the continued continuity, like you actually you reprised the fake Sting role in TNA years later.
Yeah, they did a little. I think it was with Jeff Jarrett and Monty Brown, and they were kind of doing a little portrayal, which that time it was more on the goofy skit kind of thing. So, it wasn't really going against Sting or anything. But well, I guess be involved. But yeah, we were just out there kind of goofing around with that one, and I came out, and Jeff and Sting had remembered from that night, so I was an easy fit into that. And then my crow. I don't know if anybody had seen that, but Sting carried his crow on his shoulder, and they had James Storm dressed up in a bird outfit. So that was my crow night. So we just had a lot of fun with that. But yeah, it was really cool to come back and be able to do that again.
And that was during the period of Planet Jarrett, right?
Yeah, I believe so. There was that time was Planet Jarrett, and then I think I even did one later on. Maybe it was after I had left the company, but maybe a couple years later, I came something with Jeff and Sting, and where Jeff just kind of beat me up. I don't think people really got a good look at who it was. I don't think it was even reported that it was me. But yeah, I mean, I've had some fun times doing that over the years.
Very cool. Chris, your question?
Yeah. So, any warm-ups or preparations before you do a match?
Oh wow! I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm one of those guys that I kind of need some alone time before a match, just to get my mind right, and just kind of go over things in my head, and to where I just I just step away from everybody else. There's definitely that period of the stretching out, and I always carry the armbands with me so I could warm up a little bit. But then the last thing I did right before I went to the ring was I just said a little prayer. That was something I did every time, and that always seemed to work for me. So nothing major, but yeah, just some of my own little private things that I would do before match.
Bless you, sir.
Okay.
I think that's really cool that you say a prayer before a match. That's just awesome.
Oh yeah.
Of course, I asked this a question to Heath Miller. Heath Slater Miller.
Sure.
I asked him this question because he had a change in like his wrestling gear. He went from the trunks to the tights. When I asked him the question, which should he prefer, he said the tights because the trunks made him feel naked. I just want to know, because you actually wore trunks in pro wrestling. I was just curious to know, did you feel the same way about wearing trunks or no?
When I first did, sure. Yeah, I think anytime you make a change like that, but I wound up getting so used to them that it never crossed my mind to go back. It was actually the guy that I worked for coming up in those first 5 years. When I first debuted, I was in long tights, and I kind of had the same thing. Like I couldn't picture myself in that, and I was one of the guys that tried to stay in shape. I mean, even back then, I would try to stay in shape, and I guess on the indie scene, you kind of stand out because not everybody does that. And yeah, the guy I was working for said, I want you in trunks. He said, you got the kind of physique that we need to show off. And he had to talk me into it, and I certainly didn't have any. I think I borrowed some to first when I first started using them, but yeah, I got used to it. Then I think I even went to the shorts, the short, like the biker type, just because, yeah, I felt awkward. I felt like, just yeah, you're running around naked almost, but you get so used to it, and that's how I prefer it now. I mean, my my best years in the business, that's all I did. I had trunks on the whole time.
Ah, okay. And I also want to get your thoughts on, because in 1996 you had I believe, two tryout matches for WWF at the time, WWF Superstars, against two guys that would eventually become tag teams, Bradshaw and Farouk. So I just want to get your memories on your one of your first matches in the WWF against those guys.
Yeah, that was probably my second year in the business, and the guys that I trained with, they kind of had that connection to anytime the WWF was in town. They were the guys they called for that. It wasn't necessarily a tryout match. I don't think they were looking at us for just new talent or anything. I mean, we were there to do a job, and we were considered enhancement talent, and so yeah, we were brought in to make the stars look good, and I drew the straw of Bradshaw and Farouk. You know, it's funny to look back on, yeah, because that was some time before they even became a tag team. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, it was definitely a learning experience, being a new guy in the business, being able to walk in the WWF dressing rooms and see all those guys that a lot that I had watched coming up. Yeah, it was just a really cool experience, but I knew what I was there for, and I still needed to, I definitely needed to have some years of experience before I could be taken serious again. But great experience, and Farouk and Bradshaw were both cool to work with.
Very cool. And Chris, before you ask your next question, I just want to say, to preserve the wonderful world of kayfabe, I just want to say that if I were ever to be in pro wrestling, and for tonight, tonight's episode, I'm going to refer to myself as Wild Child Petey Harris, who is the kayfabe nephew of Wildcat Chris Harris.
The Wild Child. We'll go with that. You already got the hair, man, so we can make something out of that.
Thank you, sir. Let me just say that you're one of my inspirations for making my hair like that. I when I was a kid, I had short hair, and when I saw your hair, I was like, damn, I wish I had his hair. When I saw your hair and I saw James Storm's hair, but mainly you, because I was a big fan of, like, in the America's Most Wanted, I was a huge fan of your work. Like, me and my friend, we used to pretend like we were America's Most Wanted, and I would always be the Chris Harris.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing stuff like that. Yeah, the hair's worked for me all these years, so yeah, it's kind of fit me. I don't feel like Wildcat without it.
Bless you so much. Chris, your next question.
What were your memories working in WCW from 1989 to 2001?
Oh wow, I mean, it was just a great experience altogether. Just to be there, I don't want to say we were there every week, but most weeks we were there, and I was definitely working towards something. Of course, I was, I was really taking advantage of all the matches that they were offering, and really worked to gain that contract, because they didn't sign a lot of guys to that out of the group that was coming in with me. So I was, very proud of being able to sign the WCW contract, but some of the highlights, I mean, it was just the guys I was working with. I mean, I got to work with Kurt Hennig. I got to work with Shane Douglas. A lot of the up and coming stars as well. But yeah, it was just really cool to be able to work with those guys. And Jimmy Hart was running a lot of those shows, and Mike Tenay, Scott Hudson. They really helped out to just put us over in commentary, even though. In those kind of matches, not necessarily like the WWF enhancement matches. These, of course, we were there to make the stars look good, but they were more competitive. So they were getting a chance to see some things that we could do. So I was really appreciative of that. My first one there was with Booker T. And he didn't, he had no idea who I was and didn't know my background. And even Booker went out there and, gave me a competitive match. So, just working with all those guys, it was an honor. And, the thing I take away from that, not just the experience I got, but I was also one of those guys, even though we may have been on a security thing for Nitro and Thunder, I was watching all these guys. And by that point I did, I was striving to get there. And I was one of those that was getting that feeling of, hey, I want to be in that spot. I want to get out of this secured out because I really want to push to get to that spot. And so every time I was seeing an angle go through and, just hearing the people and that, it's like, I got that itch. I just wanted to, it just made me drive so much more to try to get in that spot, which, is what we all should do. So, but yeah, for my personal experience, it was great to be able to have it. Of course, we've heard stories of what was really going on behind the scenes. So, there was a lot of, chaos that was going on. And, I signed in October and 6 months later, the whole company, who would have thought that it would go out of business or be bought. So, yeah, it was kind of a pretty big letdown when that happened, but I cherished the time I was there.
Awesome.
Although we actually already talked about your experience as Fake Sting, I'll probably just go ahead and replace it with a different question here. Would you say, though, that TNA has become the spiritual successor to WCW, or perhaps that title belongs to AEW?
No, I think, for different reasons. As we said before, TNA came along when there wasn't anything out there. And, we just needed to get in front of as many eyes as we could. And it was a homegrown operation. So, we had to work for our TV. I think we started out with the weekly pay-per-views and did that for a while. And then finally got a TV deal with Fox Sports, which was a huge step up for us. But even that, we had to keep striving. And then our big break was on Spike TV when we got that. And, we had to start with a bad time slot and had to work our way into, Thursdays prime time. So it was just, we were just working our way up. And, we had to really fight to get that, and we were proud of it. And as we did that, more eyes were on the product at each time. Now, since there's many more organizations around, whether you have Ring of Honor and, the NWA. And so there's other organizations, which I think is great in general for everybody because they have more places to work. But, yeah, AEW, they have the backing of the Turner Network. So, and nobody has done that since WCW. So, they kind of had that engine pushing them from the get-go. And, that's great for them. And I think right away they had the eyes out and kind of like TNA before, everybody was ready for a new TV product. And they had the names to do it. And they had the homegrown talent to start with. And so in different ways, I think both you could say we're the next in line. But hey, I'm all for as many companies as we can, because there's certainly enough talent out there. I just I would love to see everybody have a place to work and give all the fans a variety of what they choose to watch.
I agree.
Totally agree. As a wrestling fan, and Chris, you too as a wrestling fan, we both agree to that wholeheartedly. And before I ask the next question, though, I just had a small, quick question. Because AEW has an entrance for both the baby faces and heels. Didn't TNA first start that first in the Impact Zone, where they had one entrance that was for the heels and then one entrance for the baby faces?
Yeah, we actually did that in Nashville. The Asylum is what we called it, but there was two entrances there that we did, and then once we started doing let's see, that was the Asylum and the Impact Zone. We started filming in Universal Studios. But yeah, that was not just two different entrances, two different sides of the building. So yeah, they started with that, and that seemed to be that was great. We had it was just different entrances. It didn't mean a whole lot to us, but yeah, it was just something different for the fans to see. Instead of just having one for everybody, the fans on this side can enjoy being close up, and then across the way, the other fans can have the excitement as well. So it just gave them double that. So yeah, but TNA, yeah, we did that for a long time.
Cool. And of course, you had your first. I could be wrong with the year though, but I think in 2002 you had your first tryout with NWA TNA and put it in a match against someone you would share six tag team titles with, and that is your memories of your tryout match with NWA TNA in 2002 and working with Cowboy James Storm.
Yeah. So when I was talking about being work in the Nashville area, Storm was a local guy that I got to meet when I first went down there. So I had known Storm. We were friends. We had worked together several times in the area. So I got to know Storm really well, and we just happened to in the area, been in the middle of a feud for Burt Prentice's organization, and so this was actually it's come to be known as a tryout match because a lot of the TNA officials were there, and they were kind of doing a dry run with test run with the commentary and just different people being put in different positions. But it was actually a Burt Prentice promotion, and there was a lot of guys that were on that show that wound up being hired. But so Burt wanted to put two of his best guys out there, and Storm was a top guy. I was a top guy, and interesting enough, we were kind of both baby faces at the time, but he thought we would get the best match out of each other. And so, yeah, Storm and I, like I said, we had great chemistry as opponents as well. So we just went out there and said, hey, man, we know who's watching. So let's go out there and let's put everything into it. And still to this day, even after all my matches, I mean, that is one of my favorite matches I've ever done. We went out and really tore the house down, and I'm not sure how many matches everybody was watching, but for some reason they were watching that one, and we really got their attention of several people. But and I'd known Jeff Jarrett from WCW. Storm had known him even longer than that, being both of them from Nashville. But yeah, I went back and I kind of looked at Jeff just to see any kind of reaction he had, and he just winked at me and he said, "We'll be in touch." And that was all I needed to hear. And within a couple of weeks, Bob Ryder, who was handling contracts back then, and gave us a call and booked us for the first show.
Sweet. Chris, your question?
So what are your more outlying memories of working with James Storm?
As opponents or tag team?
I think
I mean,
right? As a team?
Well, yeah, as a team.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, we knew each other very well, and so we were both just we were so happy to be part of the company, be part of that first show. We knew the potential it had, and so with the names they were bringing in, I mean, it just this felt like it could really be something. And they had a lot of with Jeff's connections, he had a lot of the production crew and directors and that from WCW working with us, so it had that big time feel. So Storm and I went in with an open mind, great attitude, and the thing is, I think they knew they wanted to do something with us. They just wasn't sure. They weren't sure what, because there was just so many things going on. They had their main stars that they needed to their names where they needed to draw the attention in, but they also needed to create new stars. And I think we were in that group of new stars, but they just weren't sure what to do. And I think it was Bob Ryder, who was a great friend of both Storm and myself. He came up with the idea to just put them together. Let's see what happens. And so that's when Storm and I, even though we may have thought we're going to work in singles, when they give you that opportunity, I mean, that's just something that's part of the business. If that's what they're giving you, you just take it and you run with it. And that's something him and I looked at each other and we were like, look, if this is what we got, if they're going to put us in a tag team, then we're going to go out there and we're going to be the best tag team that we can be. And that just took off from there. I mean, we just took everything that we had learned and known from tag team wrestling growing up and the teams that we watched, and we just tried to apply that into our work. And it turned out that we had great chemistry together as well. And it was just great working with Storm because we worked together. I mean, we ended up working as a unit, and you don't always find that with tag teams. They just sometimes they work against each other. But Storm and I, like I said, we were great friends. So not only did we have the chemistry in the ring, but we were friends outside of the ring. We traveled together, in the car, and in hotels, and we worked out together. So yeah, it was a really strong friendship that we had developed, and I love my time with him because it was nothing. You never have to feel alone because you're riding this wave with a partner, and that's the coolest thing.
So cool. Like that's just awesome. And I do want to ask you about like America's Most Wanted though, because if you would ask me my top three favorite TNA tag teams of all time, I would say America's Most Wanted #1. I would say the Naturals would be second, and then Beer Money would be third. I just want to know like whose idea was it to put both of you as a tag team and the origin of the America's Most Wanted name.
Well, it was Bob Ryder's idea to put us together and see what happens, and we made something happen. And then I think they just saw the flow that was going. I mean, it was starting to work, and it was starting to catch on. So we were booked in more angles, and we, even though that we would be put in situations, we try to hit a home run every time because we would go out there and we would strive to be the best match on the show. We'd go out there and, like I said, we just did what we knew, and in tag team wrestling, and no matter what the team was that we were working with, we were willing to go out there, and we wanted to put the best match on that we could, and strive to be the best match on the show. A lot of times we opened the show, and sometimes we were built for a match later on in the card. But the name actually, I didn't know about. I didn't remember this until a while later, but yeah, it came from Storm. He came up with that name, and he said he got it. Like I said, we hung out a lot. We had the nightlife going on in Nashville, and there were times, we'd have, you'd run into the police here and there just because they're patrolling downstairs or downtown, and he had to remembered a time where I don't remember what the interaction was. I don't think it was anything bad, although we had plenty of those. But yeah, he just said one of the officers said something to us because just the look we had in that. He just said, "You guys better be careful. You're going to wind up on America's Most Wanted, the TV show." And we all just kind of laughed about it and joked about it. And I guess it stuck with Storm because he came up with that. And right away, I said, "That's awesome. There's so much we could do with that as far as just the gimmick itself, and just different ways we could channel that." So yeah, there's so many different directions you could go with that, but I thought that was a perfect name right from the start. And even TNA was, I think, a little leery at first using that name because maybe a copyright from the TV show, but there was, we never had a problem at all. And yeah, next thing you know, we were at first we were Harrison Storm for a while, but it didn't take long. And they were announcing this as America's Most Wanted.
It's a really cool name too. And Chris, before you ask your question, I got to ask you too, Mr. Harris, because you will also put with America's Most Wanted had Gail Kim as their valet manager, and I just want to know like what were your thoughts on Gail Kim joining America's Most Wanted and working with Gail Kim?
Oh, Gail's awesome. Yeah, I loved working with Gail. That actually started because we had a few years under our belt, and I think that was actually when there was a lot of things happening. We were starting on Spike TV, so we were getting ready to start that venture, and we had just turned heel. So there was a lot of changes. People knew us as the big baby faces of the organization, and they loved us and cheered us on to a lot of titles. But there was a lot of changes going on, and we turned heel, and we aligned ourselves with Jeff Jarrett. And right away from day one, that was when Gail was put with us. And I was kind of wondering how we just never thought of that, having a valet or a manager or anything like that. And let's be honest, Gail wants to work. She wants to wrestle. So we knew how tough this girl really was, but this is how she got her started in TNA, and she worked her way up to eventually having matches and become one of best champs they had. But yeah, it just turned out to be awesome. You know, from day one, turning heel, being on Spike, we just used her to every advantage that we could because you know we didn't mind being those dirty heels out there. You know, taking every shortcut that we could because it just got us more and more heat. So we took every advantage of Gail. She was right there for everything. And she just became part of the package. I mean, I didn't feel right doing an entrance or a promo without her. She just became part of us, and I just thought that was a great fit. And I think she enjoyed it. Although, like I said, I think she wanted to be working, but you would have never known. I mean, she had a great attitude about it, and it was just it was awesome. I loved Gail, and I love everything she did with us, and it was even so much better to be able to see her and watch her grow and become the women's champion several times. So yeah, I love Gail.
You three were great though, because I always said like the America's Most Wanted with Gail Kim was like the Hardy Boys with Lita. It was just an excellent pairing.
Yeah, it all fit.
Well, minus the part where Edge split them up.
Yeah, well, we don't have to talk about that right now. Chris, your question though?
Yeah. So, what are your memories of working on the first pay-per-view for TNA in 2002, which is the Gauntlet for the Gold match?
Well, like I said before, I mean, there was just excitement all the way around. Everybody was excited to be there. Some guys that hadn't had work since WCW were looking forward to being able to be put back to work. And then, of course, you know, there's a lot of the young guys that were looking for opportunity. Storm and I were two of them. AJ Styles, another big one. So everybody was just really excited. And, you know, I'm not sure what led to putting each person where they were. I think Storm, that the very first event, he was in a tag match. I think it was the second pay-per-view that we teamed together. But yeah, that first one I was in Gauntlet for the Gold. And as far as I was concerned, I mean, it couldn't have gotten any bigger than that. You know, that was the main match, the main attraction. It was for the heavyweight championship, the first TNA champion. You know, I knew I could have easily been just, you know, mixed up in the middle there somewhere. But the fact is they gave me an opportunity, and I was in there with some top stars. And you know, so the Gauntlet was I mean, I was just proud to be a part of that. And I knew, you know, if I went out and even in something like that, you know, sometimes, you know, when it comes to a gauntlet type match, you know, you could be in there for 30 seconds or you could be in there for a half hour. So I was just looking to get out there and show what I could do, and hopefully, you know, get some more attention that, you know, hey, we need to do something with this kid. So yeah, just excitement all around in the back and you know, just the going into it, the you know, of course, the good nerves and the good anxiety and that going into it, and then just a feeling of accomplishment once we were done. And you know, we were just looking forward to the next time we could make something happen again.
And you also mentioned the second TNA pay-per-view. This is actually where you and James Storm won your first NWA TNA tag team titles, I believe against Ron Harris and Brian Lee. Memories of winning your first ever NWA TNA tag team titles?
Well, yeah, that wasn't the second one. The second one was the week after. We did weekly shows. So that was in June. I think it may have not been till September maybe or something. I don't know. It was a couple, 2-3 months later that we won our first tag title. And yes, that's correct. It was Ron Harris and Brian Lee. Another gauntlet match. I'm not sure why the titles were held up. I can't remember, but yeah, we were put in that, and it was just yeah, it's just, I don't even want to say, a lot of times people say that the first one is the best. It's hard to even say that because I didn't know what was happening. It was one of those kind of things where, you know, we're still trying to get some traction as a team, but obviously the company saw something in us. And you know, when we won the titles for that first time, it was like, you know, what just happened kind of thing. And I took a lot of pride in it. And I know Storm did as well, because those NWA tag titles, you know, the NWA we were affiliated with them. It was NWA TNA. And to win those titles, we knew of the prestige and history that those titles had. I mean, these are the same belts that same championships, you know, the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express and the Horsemen and the Road Warriors. I mean, all these teams that have these titles, and now we're in the record books. So it was awesome to just to think that, you know, no matter what, that nobody can take that away from us. We're now in the record books as the NWA Tag Team Champions, and also to be the first TNA champions. Yeah, we took it very serious, and it was a huge accomplishment. Also an accomplishment just because, you know, it let us know that the TNA as a whole was they had a lot of faith in us to be able to carry the tag team division. So and you know, Ron Harris, Brian Lee, love working with those guys. You know, they were super cool to work with, and you know, they can easily tear you in half if they want to, but they saw that they were trying to make new stars with Storm and I, so they were really great to work with. And yeah, that was just the first of many. And I think as it went on, I just started to really when we win the second or third or that, it's like I knew what it was about by that point. So I could really enjoy the moment and really enjoying the excitement of winning those titles. So, but yeah, that first time, I mean, you never forget that first time.
Absolutely. And NWA and TNA, they really have beautiful belt designs. I will say, like, those belt designs were just gorgeous, like for both companies.
Yeah, I love what they did with the belts, and even the X Division title, which was brand new.
Yeah. And of course, you worked a program your memories of your feud with Sports Entertainment Extreme, or SEX, and working with what many people will call this man the most controversial person in the world, and people like that, including someone like Jim Cornette would say this, and that is Vince Russo.
And the Jerry Springer emulator.
I definitely would say he's controversial, but yeah, I mean, I got a chance to work with Vince, and you know, I'll say I'm a Vince Russo guy, just because, you know, I felt like I had a good friendship with him, a good bond. The times that I was really working close with him, I think he was, you know, looked out for my best interest, especially maybe we'll talk about it later, but my when I had the program with Jeff Jarrett in the singles. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole Sports Entertainment Extreme, the sex, that was 100% a Russo idea, and you can certainly there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. When you hear that name, you can tell that's a Russo idea. But you know, just to defend him a little bit, this would go for anybody. He just happened to be the one with all the ideas. You know, for anybody, you could throw 100 ideas out, and some of them are going to turn out to be great, and some of them are going to they're going to be horrible. And you know, so people can jump on the horrible ones and say, well, that's a horrible writer. He didn't know what he was doing, and you know, destruction of all these companies and all that kind of stuff. But you know, the ones that work, you know, he it doesn't get a whole lot of credit for that. And I thought that, you know, when you first, you know, hear those the initials, you know, sex, it's like, oh my God, what are we doing here? But you got to remember, we're working for a company that's called TNA. So, you know, it's not that far fetched. So, you know, for him to do that, and, you know, it couldn't be any more perfect. I mean, Sports Entertainment Extreme. I mean, he was always that sports entertainment guy, where even though a lot of us really stuck to the core of professional wrestling, you know, that's where you got to make that mix. And that's where it's got to, you know, you got to blend. It's got to be a little bit of everything, a little bit of both. And I love the angle. I love the story. I know he had the members kind of shift in and out, but I know they had a lot of programs with different people, but I know we were part of it for a long time. Yeah. And especially with Triple X, you know, they were part of SEX, and Triple X themselves were just three great talents. And we loved working with any two of the three. And I'm speaking of Chris Daniels, Elix Skipper, and Low Key. So that was our main focus when it came to the Sports Entertainment Extreme. It was working with those three guys, and we had classic matches with them, and really enjoyed that. And as everybody knows, they led to some of our best matches.
Thank you for also clarifying who Triple X was, because I used to confuse Triple X and Diamond in the Rough because they both had Elix Skipper in it. Because I think Diamond in the Rough had Simon Diamond, Pat
Kenny, Simon Diamond, and David Young.
Yep. Yeah.
I also got to wonder too, though. You mentioned in the joke behind the name TNA, and how many times was that name sort of just gagged on that you actually can recall throughout your career?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's hard to think back to that. I'm sure there was some jokes played out, but that was the idea. I think when they came up with the name, the TNA initials are supposed to get your attention, and you're going to think the tits and ass. And we had cage dancers, and we had girls in skimpy outfits, and but that's what we were out there for. They wanted to try to get the attention and take it a little risque. But if you want to get right down to it and say, well, what does the TNA really stand for? Total nonstop action. So you're kind of giving the best of both there. But yeah, I mean they weren't afraid to blur the lines there a little bit.
I guess it was kind of risky to a point, and the knockouts division, and they were still like a little bit skimpy, but they were still wrestlers.
Great wrestlers. We had one of the best women's division in all of wrestling, I think.
I agree. And Chris,
probably the best to this day.
Chris, before you ask the question, though, I just have to ask Mr. Harris. At that time, the creative department consisted. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but was the creative department Jeff Jarrett, Dutch Mantell, and Vince Russo?
Yeah, for a long time it was the three of them.
Okay.
I think when it started out, I think Jerry Jarrett was still a part of that, but then eventually Jerry kind of stepped aside. And but yeah, for the longest time it was run by those three guys. Yeah.
I was actually shocked when they said they brought in Jim Cornette. I'm like, how the hell is Jim Cornette going to work with Vince Russo? We all know the history between those two.
Well, yeah, they definitely had an interaction when the event that when Storm and I wrestled each other for the little tryout thing. They had a little interaction there. But yeah, Cornette wasn't brought in the early days. It wasn't until later on down when we were taping in Universal Studios, he was brought in. But honestly, maybe I was just naive. I didn't know of how deep that went. I guess we all knew that there was heat, if that's what you want to call it, but we just didn't know how deep it went. So I never got into the drama of that. I don't know who talked to who and made it work. And but they obviously worked together again in TNA, so they got through it at least for a while.
True. Chris, your next question.
Right. So, what were your memories of your NWA a TNA World Heavyweight Title match with Jeff Jarrett in 2004 and working with Jarrett?
Well, God, Jeff's was and still is one of the best to be in the ring with. I mean, the guy had years of experience under him and world title reigns. Yeah, it was just really cool. And of course, it's his company, so I know that I'm in good hands with him. But yeah, that just kind of got led into. I think Storm had a shoulder injury, so he was kind of put on the shelf. And although he was there, he was still there. He was still working. By my side, like being a corner man or for things like that. So I'm really glad they didn't try to split us up for that, because that could have easily transpired to that. But during that time, he wasn't able to actually work matches. They decided to fit me into the main event picture, and I got to work with a lot of guys that the AJ Styles and Raven, Ron Killings. I mean, I got to work with a lot of the top guys, and for me, it just kind of reassured my confidence that I could still hang in the singles division, and then to be able to be brought into the world title picture with Jeff. Yeah, that was really exciting for me, and being able to work with Jeff, we had a number of matches, but our big one was for the world title on the TNA pay-per-view, and yeah, that was one of my favorite matches as well. We just went out there and did everything we could to make it a great main event. And you know, it ended with a guitar shot to the head, which, you know, I'm one of the many that have taken that. So you know, it's no problem there. But yeah, just a great experience, and I was honored to be put into the singles roles, and it let, again, and kind of what I was saying about the tag team division earlier on. It just let me know that they had enough faith in me to take a tag team wrestler for the past couple of years, and you know, he kind of belongs in the heavyweight title picture. And the thing is, the people were into it. I mean, they bought everything with that. So you know, for that title match, I mean, they were on the edge of their seat thinking that, hey, there could be a new champion right here. So so it was very exciting for me and for the fans, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Before I ask the next question, I just want to know, how do they do those guitar shots? Does he like cut the guitar before doing it, and like does he pre-break the guitars like that way they break, like they completely break? Like how did he do those guitar shots?
You know, man, I wish I could tell you. That was never my thing to ask. As far as I was concerned, it was breaking over my head. So that's that's about all I know with it. I guess that's something Jeff would have to.
Did he get a lot of quick
I never. What was that?
Oh, I was gonna say, did he get a lot of quick draw McGraw jokes about it, like, with his alter ego El Kabong?
I don't know anything about that. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. You'd have to like see it to get the reference.
No, it just yeah. I mean, that was just Jeff's thing, and when I was putting the program with him, I knew that there was probably a couple coming. So I never once questioned. I trusted Jeff. I never questioned how hard they were, or if he was going to gimmick them or anything like that. I just I trusted him. So yeah, don't have no idea how that happened. I just knew to be ready.
Very cool. And of course, you share tag team gold with Primetime Elix Skipper. So I was just curious to know, like, memories of winning the tag team titles and the NWA TNA tag team titles with Elix Skipper and working with Primetime.
Oh, well, yeah, just working with Elix. I mean, you can't say enough great things about this guy. I mean, he's a superior athlete. I actually got to work with him in WCW, so he was also a young guy coming up, and they were looking to do something with Elix even back in WCW. So he shows up in TNA, and he's even better than he was before. He's bigger. He's in better shape, which is hard to believe because Elix was always in great shape. But yeah, being able to wrestle him. I mean, like I said, we just those matches with Triple X were incredible. Loved working with Elix. He was always one of the ones that he was looking to try new things, just because there were things he could do that a lot of us couldn't do. So it was a lot of something new with him. But that particular instance, I'm trying to think exactly what led up to it, but I think that night, so the Naturals were the champions, and they had taken out Storm and they had taken out Chris Daniels. And I think the whole idea was, you know, we were the two top challengers for the tag team titles, and they were taking out one member of each team, thinking that, okay, you know, we took care of all four of them. You know, they can't wrestle without their partners. So it was one of those things where the Naturals went to the ring, not expecting to defend the titles, and TNA said, "Oh no, yeah, you are. We have a team." And it was one of those ones where you take the two healthy members of those teams, and they're going to wrestle them. And so it was kind of like, you know, Elix and I go out there, and you know, hey, we have an opportunity here, and we hit that ring and went after them. And I don't remember a lot about the match. I have to think it had to be a good match. But yeah, just to win the belts with Elix, I mean, you know, that was different for me. I had done everything with Storm, so to be able to win, I think it was a shock to Elix and I. It was a shock to the fans. It was just a really cool moment because that's something that nobody would have ever expected. And so, you know, I remember the end of that match, you know, handed the title to Elix, and all of a sudden I have another partner, and we're the tag team champions. So it was just a really cool, really good story story that we were doing, and you know, it was just kind of like, okay, where do we go from here? So, but yeah, real cool moment, very exciting, and I hope the fans enjoy it as well.
Well, I mean, both you guys are just incredible athletes. I mean, you could be a baby face or a heel, Mr. Harris, and you probably hate me being like, if I was one of those fans in the crowd, you probably hate me if I was cheering you as a heel because, like, as a dedicated fan, I would have cheered you regardless if you were a baby face or not, or
Oh
heel.
yeah, I'd have gone right after you. You'd be like a little Weasley hippie. I'd come after. So
I would love that.
I'd make you boo me.
I would love that. Chris, your next question.
I mean, these days, just about every pro wrestler is a tweener, or even the Miz on WWE,
Or if you're MJF.
or if you're MJF on AEW. So, circling back to your time as Fake Sting, what were more of your memories that you can remember reprising the role of Sting back in 2006 and being part of Planet Jarrett?
Yeah, back then I think it was I think Jeff and Monty Brown were in cahoots somehow. And they were trying to get under Sting's skin. And so I remember Eric Young was the one that portrayed the surfer Sting. He had the blonde hair, so I think he kind of, you know, fixed his hair up that way, and he used one of Sting's old outfits. But I remember that one because that was really cool. I think Eric Young. I mean, first off, Eric Young, you put anything in his lap and he'll make it work. But so he went out there with that, and that was pretty cool for me to see. I thought that was exciting. But yeah, just the little thing we did. I mean, I think he just we were brought out and brought into the ring, and it was a real short-lived thing. But yeah, we were just kind of, you know, we were all the heels trying to get under get Sting annoyed for whatever program they were doing that he was doing with Monty and Jeff. So I think it was just a one-night thing, but yeah, it was always fun.
And I have to get your whose idea was it to split America's Most Wanted, and how did you feel about the split?
Well, a lot of people don't know they tried to split us up a few times. And that's, you know, I was kind of praising Vince earlier, but one of the things that he was trying to do that I didn't like. I mean, we got together in 2002, and in 2003 he's already trying to split us. Now we're still new guys, so we're trying to keep our mouth shut and just do what we're told. But we knew we were onto something, and and Vince kind of, if you go back to his WWE days, WWF days, the Attitude Era and that. I mean, there was just a lot of singles guys that were kind of paired up. Maybe they have a title reign, and then right away they're split apart, and then they have a feud together. And that was just kind of, I think that was just Vince's thing because of the sports entertainment part of it. It's like, okay, we got something working. Let's split them up, and then they're going to feud, and that kind of thing. So I knew where he was coming from. It's just I believed in tag team wrestling, and I'm sure I took it a lot more serious than maybe he did. So that was one of the. It may have been the first time we actually spoke up, and I'm sure we tried to do it diplomatically, but whether it was Jeff or Vince or Dutch, I'm not sure, but we just really we believed in it, so we felt like we had to speak up, and we just said, look, we really have something good going here, and it'd just be such a waste to split us up. And we just felt there was a lot more life in America's Most Wanted, so we really pushed to stay together, and I thank God they did. And there was talk another time, and same thing. We just really pushed all these times to stay together. And I think there was even talk before we did the heel turn. But we decided to let's just, if we're going to change it up, let's go this direction, because we had a great babyface run. Let's see what we can do as heels, and we got so much more life out of even being heels, because man, they hated us. So yeah, when the time came, could we have gone longer? Sure, I think we could have. But I guess at that point, we had already had, probably 5 years into it. And, I think there was a part of Storm and I where, we did want to kind of see where we could go in TNA and singles. We had done our part with the tag team, and so whenever it was talked about, I think it was a mutual thing, but I was definitely on board. I'm not sure who pushed harder or anything like that, but yeah, once the time came, I didn't really look at it as like, oh my God, it's over. I think I was trying to be a positive about it and look at, okay, now that that's gone, I know we're going to have Storm and I will be together for a while as adversaries, but I was looking to see where it could really go for me because since I had that time in the singles run in the earlier days, I thought I could really strive to get back to that again, and I was looking for that, and I think Storm is looking for the same thing. So just more opportunity. We just kind of look at it as okay, that this chapter might be over, but let's see where else we can go, and so we just try to look at it like that.
You also mentioned too working with the Naturals in 2000, like mainly in 2005, because this is when the feud was like at its peak, in my opinion. And I just want to get your memories on working with Chase Stevens, Andy Douglas, working with the Naturals, especially in that one match in May of 2005, I believe, because I remember because the late great Chris Candido managed the Naturals, and they took the tag titles from America's Most Wanted. And the irony was that it was 2 days after this happened that Chris Candido passed away, I believe, and I think it also led to a double turn, right, where like AMW turned heel and then the Naturals turned babyface, right?
I think at that point we were already heels, but the Naturals kind of did some switching too because they were heels when the company first started, and then they became baby faces. Yeah, so I mean, first off, I never get tired of beating up Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens. So that's one of the great things about working with those guys. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that the wrestling world was just then seeing it, but we had wrestled those guys on so many shows across the country, even in the early days, because we wrestled them. Even in the earlier TNA days, we wrestled the Naturals a lot, where we were the baby faces, they were heels, and when we were taking on whether it's independent bookings or eventually it got to be TNA house shows, we worked with those guys a lot, and it was just we just had great chemistry with those guys. We were all good friends, so we loved hanging out together as well. But yeah, it was just such good chemistry, and we had a lot more freedom when we did the independent shows because we didn't have the restrictions of TV time or anything like that. So I think a lot of our TV matches were awesome, and there was a lot of thought put into that, and we exchanged titles a few times, and so yeah, just what everybody did get to see on TV, and it was a lot of fun working with those guys, but then yeah, you just add another measure to it. In 05, we had both flipped, and we were in another program with them and feuding over the titles. And yeah, it just so happened that Chris had been with them, and he had just broke his leg. I think you even said like the days before. And when he was out for this particular match, he was in a cast, and he was in a wheelchair. And I'll tell you the one thing I do remember, and it's something I probably shouldn't admit to, but that particular match, and I can't remember why, and I'm sure we didn't have a good excuse, but we went under on time. You always hear a lot of times where people go over on time, and you just get everybody start and wonder how to get out of this and that kind of thing. We actually went under on time, and so there was some time left for their celebration, and so Andy and Chase, while they had extra time to celebrate, so they went and did it on the floor with Chris, and it turned out that they handed him the belts, and he was just celebrating like the actually that makes me think that they were heels if Chris was with them. But anyway, I remember them putting the belts on Chris's shoulders, and he just had that big laugh about him, and just because they had just won. And it turned out that was one of the last visions we had of Chris, just being so happy, and he had the world tag team titles over his shoulders for his guys. And it just turned out that, and I say that because had we not gone under on time, we may have not ever had that shot. We could have gone off the air with just them having the belts and raising hands and that being the outshot. But we actually had, maybe it was just meant to be. We had that extra time to fill in before we would go off the air. And it's kind of like you're a lot of times you're just grabbing at things to try to fill it in. Well, this was what they decided. The cameras happened to be right there, and I'm sure the director was saying, "Shoot this, shoot that," and Keith Mitchell was the director, and they got a shot of Chris Candido on the way out, and yeah, I just think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that turned out to happen organically. It was just not that was not a planned deal, so it was so cool to have that.
And all your dealings with Chris were just good, right? Working with Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't work with him a lot, but yeah, Chris is just fun to be around. I don't think I ever had a chance to wrestle him, but he was around TNA for a while there, and yeah, he's just a fun guy to be around. Really cool. I never really got to pick his brain, but I would have loved to because I just heard how great of a worker he was. So yeah, I missed out on that opportunity. But yeah, the times we did have with him, he was up for anything to make the match or the angle better and exciting. He was up for. He was ready to go.
That will always be my favorite match of all time in TNA because it was actually my first ever match, which actually made me become a fan of TNA. So, like James Storm, Chase Stevens, who I'm gonna have on the show in the near future, and Andy Douglas, you guys are the reason why. Like I said before, you guys are the reasons why I'm a TNA fan.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I'm glad that yeah, I'm glad that happened like that.
Oh, it was such a great time. Like definitely as a middle schooler. Chris, your next question?
Yeah. So, what were your memories of your feud with Cowboy James Storm?
Oh wow, I remember us beating the hell out of each other. Yeah, that was one of those things. We were just talking about the split. We knew that the attention was going to be on us because people were going to look and see how we did in singles, and our first test was going to be with each other. After that split, I think the split was well done. I think the intensity was there. The people were really with it. Taking the beer bottle to the eye and me being blinded and yeah, it just really heated up and it was intense. And the matches that we got a hold of each other, whether they were sometimes they were tags and then a couple featured pay-per-view events. But yeah, it was very intense. I remember it being that. And I remember and him and I, we were, like I said before, we were very close. And sometimes it's your close friends that you get hit the hardest. That's just kind of how it is in wrestling because you don't have to apologize for it. We knew what we were there to do, and we had to take it out on each other. And so we went in and we laid it in. And there were some very very stiff matches, but we were there to intensify that as much as we can and give the people everything we could out of it.
And the beer bottle to the eye, what you mentioned though, that sugar glass, like that wasn't a real beer bottle, right?
Of course it was.
Oh shit. I say that because I was genuinely concerned for you. Like when I was watching, I was like, oh shit, he hit him in the eye with a beer bottle.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't good enough just to go for the head. It had to be in the eye because I had to have something, just to, we needed some sympathy on me. So, a cut on the head will clear up, but you go after somebody's vision, then you're talking about maybe a career-ending injury.
Absolutely, and of course you had a match with him at the 2007 TNA Lockdown, the 6-side steel blindfold match. Your memories of doing that match with James Storm?
Well, when I first think of that match, I think it goes more towards the negative, just because that's kind of how it's been talked about for all these years. The fans were just not into it. What they really wanted to see, they wanted to see Storm and I tear into each other and beat the hell out of each other. And this was a typical gimmick match. But if you're looking at, everybody wants to be the critic nowadays. But if you're writing for Wrestling 101, and you have one guy out for months with vision problems, and I'm wearing an eye patch match, and just things like that. I mean, it just kind of tells you that the natural fit for that would be a blindfold match. So yes, that was a Vince idea, but you know what? I mean, if anybody would have seen that. So I don't get down on Vince for that, because it just made sense to do. Just what we just didn't expect is the fans were just waiting and ready for Harris and Storm to just tear into each other because of what had happened, and that kind of limited us. Yes, we were in a cage, but we had a blindfold over us, so there was a lot of the dancing and ducking and that kind of thing, getting a hold of each other. So there was just a lot more that went into it, and the seconds leading up to us even just getting a hold of each other, the people just weren't into, and so yeah, they kind of frowned on that match. We were getting booed out of the building, which is just ironic because I think that was one of the it was always slated that was one of the worst matches that year in TNA. Yet right after that, we made up for it with the Texas Death Match, which was considered one of the best matches. So it just goes to show it wasn't necessarily the athletes or the workers involved. It was just the type of match. The people were ready for one and not the other. So I remember the crowd in St. Louis was great. It was great to be on the road, which we were doing a lot at that time. So that part was really cool, and I think the whole show was stacked. And it's a lockdown pay-per-view, so it's one of those things we got used to, having all these matches in a cage. So with us, it was more about the blindfold than it necessarily was the cage. But then again, it led to what everybody really wanted, and we gave it to them, and that was the Texas Death Match and us just beating the hell out of each other.
God bless you both. Now, before I ask the next question, though, Chris wants to know, like, working with particular, because you worked with many stars in TNA, and these next three questions that Chris is going to ask is going to be in regards to that, though. So, Chris, go ahead and ask the three back questions.
Okay. Memories of your Texas Death Match against James Storm at TNA Sacrifice in 2007.
Well, it was just it was going to be probably the most important match of my career. We knew what we had to do. We had to go out there, and it was going to be a battle. It wasn't going to be a wrestling match. So it wasn't about wrestling moves and counter holds and spots and things like that. I mean, we were out there to kill each other, and that's what I remember about it. And I remember just feeling that we really did something special. And we gave the people what they wanted, and we did not disappoint, and we gave them the ending that they felt like they deserved, and which was me hitting him with a beer bottle. So yeah, that's one of my favorite matches, and it's one of the most talked about matches. I mean, even when people, friends or family want to watch one of my matches, that's one of the ones they want to watch, and I'm like, do you realize how bloody this match is, and just how gruesome it can be, and but that's just one of those ones that everybody still loves to see.
I am Chris. Before you ask the next question, I just want to say, like, I love that match, Mr. Harris, because it just felt like two warriors just brawling it out, and like you said, like, it was an excellent closure, and also James Storm's kayfabe getting his comeuppance when you hit him with the beer bottle, which shattered the whole AMW to begin. AMW to begin with.
Yeah, and that's how it felt. It felt like two warriors battling it out. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad it portrayed that way, because that's how it felt to us too.
One of my favorite matches, two of yours.
Thank you,
Chris. Your second question.
All right. So, what were some of your memories working with Christian Cage?
Oh wow, I love that Christian was coming over to work with us. Yeah, him along with Kurt Angle, I'd put up there too. I mean, Kurt coming over was a huge leap for us, and then just another big leap was Christian coming over. Super talented guy. I actually became good friends with the guy, and so yeah, it was just really cool, because even as I was coming up in the business, this guy's on, he's part of that Attitude era. He's part of what everybody was watching. So it was really cool. And I think I was actually, I don't know if I was his first, but we did a New Year's Eve special, a TNA New Year's Eve special. That year, I guess that would have been
Was it 2005?
going into 06, I guess, maybe. And so I don't know if it was his first match, but I wrestled a singles with him on that night. And I know it was one of his first, but it was just cool to be able to get out there. And I was still part of the tag team, and I think we may even have the tag team titles, but it was just one of those things where I got to work with him, and being able to work directly with him in a match. It was very cool, and I got to see firsthand just how great this guy was, and just his thought process and the whole putting together a match. So, but then it got even better. When after Storm and I split, that was one of my first programs. We came out of I was put in the King of the Mountain, which I thought was awesome just to be in part of that. With the top guys like AJ and Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe. I mean, just Christian. It just to be in that group of guys was a complete honor. And Christian and I decided to work. We worked something out of that, and I got to work another big pay-per-view match with him. So I couldn't say enough great things about him. And I mean, he's one of my favorites to watch nowadays. I mean, when I watch AEW, and when he comes on the screen, I know that whatever this is, it's going to make sense. He's going to make it look good, no matter what cards he was dealt, whether it's a promo or whether it's in-ring work or anything like that. I just know that he's legit, man, and we're going to be entertained. And if he wants to be hated, then we're going to hate him. But it was a complete honor to be able to work with him and be able to call him a friend as well.
Very cool. And another guy that you work with is also a current AEW star too. Chris, your next question.
And yeah, I'll just add on to what you finished there. That totally reeks of awesomeness, as you once said.
Yes.
But so what are your memories of your feud with Dustin Rhodes and working with him?
Well, by that point, when we were on Spike, there was a lot of history with Dustin and Dusty from the earlier years of TNA. We did a lot of six-mans with Dusty. We did some with Dustin. They were almost like honorary members of America's Most Wanted. We did so much with those guys. So we had worked with them. We knew those guys. Always working with Dustin was always cool. I just thought he was just a cool guy that he's been around, so we could always learn from him. The difference with this one is, they were, I think him and Vince, they were looking to debut a whole new character. And, this goes back to the days of the Gold Dust. I think Vince had a lot to do with that. So now they were going to kind of try it again in a different portrayal, an evil, darker side of Dustin. And Dustin was actually involved in the ending to Christian and I's match. He cost me the match, which took me into the program with him, and we just we heated it up. I think a lot of my promos, I was just talking about how this wasn't the Dustin that I knew, and this was a darker, sicker version of Dustin. But I don't feel like we got the traction that we could have. Dustin he wasn't wrestling as Dustin. He was wrestling as the Black Rain character. And so he's trying to get behind that and do mannerisms that this new character would do. And so there was a lot more into it that we weren't able to just go out there and have a regular match. So we were trying to fit into the guidelines of this character and also what they're doing with me as well. So I guess what I remember most about that, it's always great to work with Dustin, but he had that damn rat with him. And I think our last match that we had, he had me out out by the announcer's desk, and I was down on the ground, and he put the damn rat on me, and I had to let that thing crawl around on me. And that certainly was fun, but it was better than the alternative because one of the ideas pitched was for him to put a big bag over my head with the rat inside.
Oh my
And when it comes to rodents, they can be unpredictable. So there's no telling what could have happened there. So yeah, I opted out of that one. That was one I actually said, yeah, I'm not too comfortable with that. Let's go with putting the rat on my chest or back or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, for all we know, it could have been like that one episode of 1,000 Ways to Die where the rat tries to eat its way out of the bag and through your flesh.
Yeah, I didn't want to be the doorway for that rat to eat his way out of the bag. So yeah, I'm thankful that didn't have to happen, but we did do the other side, and yeah, I mean, I don't think they stuck with the Black Rain for a while, but it didn't last too much longer. But yeah, I'd worked with Dustin for a lot of years at that point, so it was always cool to have him part of the company.
I am so glad that you turned down that putting the bag with the rat in it, because I would have been petrified doing that. I would have said no too.
Well, just to add a little to that, it did wind up happening, and it should be no surprise to everybody that it happened with Black Rain and Abyss.
Oh, I've heard. Poor Chris Park. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of things that I think a lot of us wouldn't have done, but he was all for that one. So more power to him.
Absolutely. And I was just curious to know, like, how come you left TNA in 2008? I was just curious to know, like, the reasoning behind that.
Well, it wasn't just one reason. I mean, there was a number of things that were going on. I've said it many times. I never wanted to leave TNA. I loved being part of that company from day one. I mentioned it earlier. I mean, for the longest time, the big two were WCW and WWE. So you always thought to make it big, you had to be in one of those companies. But when you're thinking that, at least when I was coming up, TNA didn't exist. So when TNA was around, it was like, hey, this is not just an alternative for the fans, but it's an alternative for a lot of the workers to make a living. So I was happy there, and I wanted to stay, but it just kind of led to my contract was up, and after the Dustin thing, there just wasn't a whole lot of direction going on. And I think I even tried to ask about it to Vince. I don't know if I got Jeff, but I just wasn't getting a whole lot of feedback, and there wasn't a whole lot of direction with where to go. And this is something I'm trying to find out because with my contract coming up, it's like, okay, either I have to sign for another longer period of time, or I have to kind of explore. And when I was really given no positive direction with what to do, and then it just kind of went downhill from there. I mean, a lot of the just wasn't anything going on TV. This was at a time where they started to bring in a lot of past WWE stars, which I'm all for if they're used in the right content, but they were just kind of being brought in and put over all of our homegrown stars, and they were just kind of, it just seemed like that was the pattern that was going on, and I needed to make a decision, and so I got some options, and one of them was WWE, and when I explored to see if there was any interest, I mean, I was told yes, there's a lot of interest. So I thought, okay, well, I mean, at least I have that. And I didn't know if I should explore that or try to work something out with TNA. And obviously, we know I decided, okay, take my chances, and I'm going to bet on myself. And it's a whole new world, but I was going to give it a try. I mean, I just felt like you always take chances in life, and that was one I took. And I didn't like leaving TNA, but it was just one of those things. I wanted TNA to want me as much as I wanted them, and I wasn't feeling that. And so, yeah, I decided to go, and looking back on it, and this was after years of looking back. I mean, I feel like if both sides would have just communicated a little bit more, maybe we could have reached something. We could have come up with something, but that's not the way it happened. So yeah, I mean, I took my chances, and once my contract was out, I left, and within weeks, I was I had a contract for WWE.
And before we get into that, though, Chris, before you ask the next three questions related to WWE, do you, Mr. Harris, do you feel comfortable talking about Brandon Walker?
Yes, sure. Braden.
Braden, pardon me.
Gotta get my name right if we're gonna trash it.
Chris, go ahead and ask your WWE questions to Mr. Harris.
All right. So, what were your memories on your tryout with WWE in 2008, and how it led to your eventual signing?
Well, I never really had a tryout with them. I signed and then I was brought into TV. So I'm assuming they had seen my work with TNA, and there was enough interest to where I was able to get a contract. And then my first match was a dark match with Shelton Benjamin. I don't think the match, I think it could have gone a lot better for whatever reason. And yeah, just I felt very good about the opportunity at first, but quickly I learned that that there wasn't as much here as I thought. I spent a lot of time in their developmental system, and you know, as we all know, I mean, I just managed to have just a couple more matches. There just wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into it. It was like I signed, and I'm not even sure they had ideas. It really just didn't feel like it. It felt like there was no preparation, anything, no thought into anything. And then by the time I did debut, you know, my name was thrown together, and I can only assume the music was thrown together because that was awful. You know, my outfit was thrown together. It was just a lot of things that just you know, for $1 billion company, I just don't think they put a lot of thought into this. And you know, so it went downhill fast. And it wasn't even just those type of things like what people would see on TV. It was a lot of the internal things too. I mean, I could tell right away that was a company that, you know, people were protecting their spot. You know, just for one example, I mean, when I did have a match, I mean, I think the majority of my moves, my arsenal, was taken away because it was too closely resembling one of their other guys. So I couldn't do this move or that move because it was too much like, and they were I don't know if offended is the right word, but you know, just they didn't want me touching that. And I was the new guy, so I had to accept that and be okay. Hey, no problem, I'll change it. And yeah, I try to keep a positive attitude through the whole thing. But yeah, it's like walking on eggshells in the back. You know, you don't want to. There were people I just was trying to avoid, and it just wasn't a great atmosphere. And this is just me. I can only speak on my experience. Other people may have a different experience. I know a lot of people have had great success there. I wish I could have been one of those, but mine wasn't. And so, yeah, I wanted to, after I guess the majority of the year of 08, I was there, and it just got to a point where I couldn't wait to get out of there.
I remember watching that, and I was really upset with what WWE did to you. I'm like, why can't he just be Wildcat Chris Harris? Why did you have to change his name? I mean, he was so like, and I say this as a longtime fan of yours, Mr. Harris. I was so pissed off what WWE did to you, especially what they did for you. I did to you on the ECW brand when they had you as Braden Walker, and they just, like you said, they changed your entire arsenal. Like, and it bothered me, like that WWE just, you know, take something that was really good and then they do the reverse. They don't turn chicken shit into chicken salad. They turn chicken salad into chicken shit.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but to be honest with you, Petey, I mean, you mentioned the name. I went into it expecting them to not use Wildcat Chris Harris. I mean, it's just kind of I mean, if you're in the business and you know how WWE works, I went in thinking, you know, knowing that, you know, Wildcat was probably done, and they were going to change the name. But that's the thing. I mean, you know, maybe I was being naive, but I was just trying to go in with such a positive attitude that I didn't care what name they gave me. I was going to make it work. I didn't care what kind of look. I was going to make it work, or didn't care what type of storyline or angle. I was just determined to make it work. And I believe I could have. I mean, I believe I had the capability to do that. I mean, I trusted in my skills, and I had, you know, I had the experience. I had, at that point, I'd had 15 years in the business. I had experience with TV with WCW. I had experience on the main event level with TNA. You know, being one of the featured guys on TV, I had plenty of experience doing promos. I mean, I had the confidence that I needed to go into that. But when you have the machine not working to help you, it does cause a problem. And the thing is, there may have been a lot of people that could have even made that work. I mean, we've had plenty of stories we could look at of stars that have been made in WWE that started out with not such great gimmicks, or, you know, they started out to where it's like, oh God, thank God he got out of that. And then this worked. Or, you know, I wish I could have been one of those guys to have made that work, or at least stuck it out to maybe where something different would have come up. But that's not what happened. And, you know, I'm not going to be, I mean, I think I was bitter for a long time, but I don't want to be bitter about it. I try to take from it what I can. And that was that, you know, I gave it a shot, and at least now I know that was what I tried to take from it more than anything, is not just the woe is me kind of thing and it's all their fault, and, you know, nothing like that. I don't want to really look at it like that. I just try to look at it like, you know what, if I'd have never decided to go, I may have wondered for the rest of my career what it was like, or if I could have done it. I gave it a shot, and I saw what it was like. And again, just my experience, but I saw that, you know, it wasn't just what I thought it was. And I didn't last long, and thank God, because I was heading down a bad road towards the end there. So it was a good thing for me to get out of there.
Yeah, and you know, at least you took the chance of actually going in and see what it was about, though. Like, as long as you take that risk, then you actually see, you got to experience, like you said, you experience yourself, like what it was like between, like, working WWE and TNA.
Yeah, and yeah, and I got a little piece of the WCW thing too. So I mean, I had seen how things work. I mean, I worked for, I mean, if you want to look at it, I mean, I had a contract with three of the biggest companies that there was at the time. So you know, I'm very happy with, you know, things I did in my career. That just was one of those that, you know, and I'm not, you know, I don't have great memories with, but I also don't try to, you know, dwell on it either. You know, it just, it's one of those things that's part of my past. And I know a lot of people like to bring it up and talk about it and get my feelings with it. But, and so I'm always willing to talk about it, but it's a good feeling to know that a lot of people had seen what I could do, and believed in me, and do feel like I had, you know, kind of a raw deal there. But you know what, I'm thankful for people like you, Petey, and you guys for supporting me in some of the best times, and you know, really you know, being a fan of the work I did with TNA. So yeah, that's what I try to think of. Man, you guys, you know, you guys keep me on that positive.
Anytime, Mr. Harris, anytime. And of course, you mentioned TNA. I definitely want to talk about your, what I call the holy shit moment, because when I first saw this, I screamed holy shit when I saw this, and that was when Matt Hardy introduced you, and everyone think that at the pay-per-view it was going to be Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy versus Beer Money, but no. They brought out James Storm's former tag team partner, Wildcat Chris Harris, as part of Immortal for one night only, I believe it was. But yeah, I mean, just memories of your grand return in 2011 of TNA as a member of Immortal, and of course working with Matt Hardy and that match with Beer Money.
Well, I mean, first thing I think of is just, yeah, I'm just excited to be back. I mean, that's where I belonged. So so I was happy that to get the opportunity again, and, you know, they were wanting to work something out, and I was all in, because that's where I fit the best. Yeah, I'd known Matt for a while, so that was cool to be able to work with him, and it was definitely a holy shit moment, because they did kind of lead you to believe that, you know, Matt was picking a partner. Then of course he's going with his brother Jeff, which, you know, thinking of it all these years later, I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know, they're expecting Jeff Hardy and they get Chris Harris. Wait a minute, what a letdown! But you know, but it was supposed to be exciting, just for the simple fact that, yeah, it was beer money, and it was James Storm's former tag team partner. So it's the guy that knows everything there is to know about James Storm, and it was going to be a hell of a battle with beer money, and then myself and Matt Hardy, and yeah, that was one night that they announced me, and then we actually did some house shows with that match. So a lot of non-televised events. We did some matches with that, so that was fun just to be back on the road with TNA, and then it led up to the pay-per-view match that I had with them, and yeah, it was great, man. It was great to be able to get in there and team with somebody like Matt Hardy, and then to be able to wrestle with, I mean, two of the guys that two of my favorite guys in the world, and both in and out of the ring. I loved working with Storm, of course, but I always loved working with Bobby. He is, I think he's so underrated. He did everything he could in TNA, and he deserved it. But he should be one of the top stars in the business. He's that good. So I loved working with those guys, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun. I mean, I really wish it would have led to more things, but that was very short lived.
And that was going to lead to my next question. Like, how come TNA didn't bring you back after like that match on the road full time though, like to do TV shows and more pay-per-views?
Well, I know there were ideas for it. They were even pitched to me, and Vince and I talked about it, and there was a lot of things lined up of where we could go with this, and there was even talk of whatever route or paths we were going to get there with, they were going to lead to eventually Storm and I teaming up again. So I thought that was really cool, and it'd be just real interesting to see how it played out. I don't know why they didn't do it. I never got a definitive answer. I think a lot of it, in my opinion, you had Bruce Pritchard was there, Eric Bischoff was there, Hogan was there. These are all guys that have admitted to not watching the history of TNA. As far as they were concerned, when they were brought in, everything from the past didn't matter anymore, and they were just going from there. So with that being said, it was like the history of America's Most Wanted didn't exist either. So when I'm being brought in, which is probably by guys like Vince and Jeff saying, hey, there's a story here. We can do something with this. To them, they were probably like, okay, let's see what happens. Well, when they come out like that, and there's no no story with it, it was just kind of like just announced like that, then there's not a whole lot for the crowd to get into. If there is a whole new audience, which I believe there was. I mean, guys like Hogan and them, they did get more eyes on the product. So a lot of people knew of Beer Money, but may not have known of America's Most Wanted. But if we would have just shown maybe some highlights, some video packages, or something like that, some clips from the past to show just how deep this bond went between Storm and myself, I think the people would have really got into it and thought, wow, there is a lot of history, a lot of years with these guys. So there's something more to be drawn out of this. But I don't know. I really couldn't say. I don't want to make it like I know what was going on behind closed doors, because I don't. But I just have a feeling that they didn't get the reaction that they wanted, and so then the higher ups, which was Bischoff and Hogan and Bruce and those kind of guys, were like, hey, this turned out the way we wanted, so let's get rid of it. So yeah, it didn't work out. And I was I really was ready to do something there too. I mean, that was exciting for me. It was like a whole new life that was kind of rejuvenated into myself, where it was like, hey, let's I'm ready to go to work again and get the whole stink of Braden Walker and the WWE out of here. So so I know I was ready, but yeah, I mean, that's one of those things when you're going to make something work, the company and the talent have to be on the same page, and I guess we weren't at that point.
I see. And also 10 years later, you returned back to TNA, now called Impact Wrestling, where you accompanied James Storm with his 1000 matchup, which eventually led to the following year where you having an AMW reunion with James Storm, teaming with you teamed with Heath Miller and Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson against Honor No More. Memories of your grand return back to Impact Wrestling and the AMW reunion, because I marked out like a fucking kid when I saw this.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting for me too. Yeah, it was the past 2 years, 21 and 22. And what a lot of people don't know is even in 20, there was talk of doing something because we were going to do, I don't remember what pay-per-view it was, but they were going to bring some of the older TNA guys back, and they were going to have some of the older match. I think they were going to do an Ultimate X match, and they were talking about doing a King of the Mountain match, which there was talk of being involved in that. But not to get too much into that because what happened there was COVID.
Right.
So that got shut down. So there was actually talk of 2020 of doing something that didn't happen. So 2021, yeah, I had found out, I've always been cool with and close with Scott D'Amore, who's in charge of that place now. And I love that, he's in charge. I think he's doing a great job. Impact still has some of the best talent there is. We just, kind of like years before, we just need to get more eyes on it. That's all. But yeah, there was talk of the 1,000th match, and Scott had said something about coming in for that, and I was down for it. I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And Storm and I always kept in touch, so I asked him about it, and I said, where did this come from? And he said he was even telling me, he said, the hell if I know. He said, I didn't even know it was my 1,000th match in there. So it was, I guess somebody was keeping track, and so they decided to do something like this, and so yeah, I was brought in, and it was cool, man. I mean, it was just a really cool experience to be brought back into the mix like that. It was saw some familiar faces, also saw some of the newer guys I had never met before, but just an all around great experience. We did a few TVs leading up to it, and then it couldn't have gotten any better with the fact that Storm was wrestling Eric Young, one of the guys that we had been all those years with. So all that was really cool, man. They had a great match, and I was there for it. I got the slug EY one last time, so that was fun. But yeah, then that was it for then. And then last year, yeah, this whole story came about. Scott had come up with an idea for us to do something again as a tag team. But to be honest with you, I mean, the past few years, I had kind of shortened my time in the ring, and I was just fine being out of it as long as I could still be involved in wrestling. I just knew my in-ring work wasn't, going to be the way it used to be. So there was talk of doing that, and I was honest with him. I said, Scott, I just don't know if I can do it. I know Storm can still do it at a decent level, but I didn't know if I could, and I didn't want to get out there and embarrass myself or embarrass the company. And everybody's going to be looking for the Wildcat of 10 years ago. I certainly didn't want to disappoint him. So anyway, the idea was brought up about he came back with what about a 10-man tag? Huh. And I thought, well, hell, I can't get more protected than that. So I was all for all that, man. So we went out, and I think we were doing TV for about 6 weeks. Our first showing was at Slammiversary, which was perfect because Slammiversary was the anniversary of the company, 20 years. It was just perfect timing, and so we came out and got the cheers in the ring with Gallows and Anderson, the Good Brothers, and the Briscoes. So we had a nice little moment with the Briscoes back then, and that kind of led into the storyline of Storm needed some help, and every time I tried to be there, he was like, no, your injuries and your health and that kind of thing. And it just kind of led to where I finally said, I'm in. And we did that 10-man tag against Honor No More. And, that was my first time working with those guys, all those Ring of Honor guys. So that was really cool to be able to work with those. And every single one of them were great to work with, great attitudes, and super cool with bringing me in. And I couldn't have asked for five better guys to work with. So that whole thing was really exciting, man. I love being back and being able to actually work a match for TNA. And it was kind of cool to the point where, Scott D'Amore and I, we wound up hugging each other in the back. And I told him, I thanked him so much for that, because I said, obviously I'm, limited to what I can do, and I'm okay. And I said, if that's my last match ever, I said I couldn't have gone out any better because I got to do it with Storm, and I got to do it on a Impact pay-per-view, and it was just so cool to be able to have that experience, and even the the directors, the producers, the guys like that, the production team, and even they were saying how cool the story it was to be able to see that, and so I made sure I went around and I thanked everybody just for that time and for the experience. So I couldn't have asked for it any better, and I still keep in touch with everybody, and if they're close to my town, I go to the Impact event and just cheer them on, man. So yeah, I love what they're doing, and I just hope that they can even get bigger and better, back to the level that they were at one point.
God bless you. And yes, and you had a hell of a career though. And before we conclude though, I just want to say, like, Chris, and then you're gonna say your farewells too. But Mr. Harris, I just gotta say thank you for not only an amazing interview, like you have this incredible gift where you can take a 30-something-year-old fan and bring him way down here and make him feel like he's 15 again, watching TNA, like, at its very peak. Yeah, like I've been a long time fan of both yours and James Storm's. Like, you guys are the reason why I'm a TNA fan. And just the athleticism and the abilities you guys perform in the ring is just incredible.
Thank you so much, man. I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to come here with you guys, and like I said, it's guys like you, Petey, that really helped make us, man. I mean, you watched from the beginning, and yeah, I mean, if we made fans out of you, the America's Most Wanted tag team, and with our matches, and then we did our job, man. That's really cool, and I appreciate you. Even to this day, having me on, and still supporting everything that the America's Most Wanted does, and TNA Impact, and just all that. So thank you very much, man.
Thank you. And one day I hope to have Chase Stevens on, and I hope to have James Storm on one day, so I can get their perspective on stuff. And before we conclude, Mr. Harris, me and Chris want to do something. I've been waiting a long time to do this since I was a kid, and that is thank you, Wildcat. Thank you,
Wildcat.
Thank you,
Wildcat.
Thank you, Wild Child.
Thank you. And I will give you a copy of this interview as soon as it's done, which will be tonight. I promise.
Sounds great. Thank you, Petey, and thank you, Chris.